The Yankee Cannonball is the signature attraction at Canobie Lake Park in Salem, New Hampshire. This Herbert Schmeck designed Philadelphia Toboggan Company Woody is an ace coaster landmark, and it stands 63 feet tall, reaches a top speed of just 35 miles per hour, and navigates 2,000 feet of track. But did you know the Yankee Cannonball didn't originally open at Canobie Lake Park? No, it originally opened in 1930 at Lakewood Park in Waterbury, Connecticut, as the roller coaster. The ride ran there for a few years before being moved to Canobie Lake Park for the 1936 season. Canobie originally called this ride the Greyhound before renaming it the Yankee Cannonball in the 1980s. If you read the sign in the queue line for the Yankee Cannonball, it mentions each section of the ride had to be shortened horizontally by 6 inches to fit the site at Canobie. From that description, you'd think the version at Canobie should match the version at Lakewood for the most part. But if you look at what the Yankee Cannonball looked like at Lakewood Park, it looked nothing like it does today. Credit to GCM for this photo, but the Yankee Cannonball looks nothing like this. For one, the pullout from that first drop looks absolutely backbreaking. Second, the coaster's layout looks way different. After the Yankee Cannonball's first drop, you have this speed hill and a large L-shaped turnaround. At Lakewood Park, after the first drop, you have this triple up going up a hill. And at the top of the triple up, the coaster doesn't appear to turn. It appears to continue on a straight out and back course. And beyond that, the return run is to the left of the first drop. On the Yankee Cannonball, the return run is to the right of the first drop. From this photo, it's clear the Yankee Cannonball was essentially custom designed for Canobie Lake Park using the wood from Lakewood Park's roller coaster. If you're familiar with the Yankee Cannonball, you know this coaster is an L shape. The ride starts inside Canobie and runs alongside the parking lot. The ride couldn't go further outward because of the road and residential neighborhood, hence why it has the L shape. As the star attraction at Canobie Lake Park, the Yankee Cannonball gets the longest lines in the entire park. The Yankee Cannonball runs a single 18-person train. Now, even though they have 2 trains, they are not allowed to run them both simultaneously anymore. They haven't run 2 trains since they collided in July of 2001. Back then, the Yankee Cannonball had manual skid brakes, and the operator accidentally did not deploy them in time. This resulted in the second train flying through the station and bumping the other train in the lift hill. There were no major injuries, but this accident had 2 repercussions. One, the park added seatbelts to the Yankee Cannonball shortly after the accident. Before that, the Yankee Cannonball ran with just buzz bars and no seatbelts, much like the Phoenix at Knoebels. 2, the park cannot run 2 trains anymore unless they completely update the braking system, which would not be cheap. The manual brakes have been replaced by an automatic skid braking system, but this system does not currently allow for 2 train operations. Now, is the Yankee Cannonball safe? Absolutely. That accident was operator error, and that operator error chance has been removed. Now, because of the 1 train operations, it's not uncommon to find this ride with a full queue, even on a busy weekday. Prior to the 2020 season, a full queue for the Yankee Cannonball meant it had roughly a 30 to 40 minute wait. However, before the pandemic, the Yankee Cannonball was in the process of receiving an updated queue line. This queue line would finally be shaded, and it goes a bit deeper towards the lift hill, so it appears this queue line will be able to hold more people. As a result, I do not know how long a full queue may take once this line is completed. One thing to note about Canobie is that they will close the queue line early for the Yankee Cannonball. They time it so the last train goes out right around closing. So in the past, this meant the queue line would cut off about a half hour before closing if it was a busy day. The Yankee Cannonball is a classic station. It has a distinctive shape and a gorgeous fountain out front. But there is a major downside to this station, and that's how small it is. The Yankee Cannonball does not have anywhere for you to wait for a specific row. The ride runs a single 18-person train, and Canobie counts off exactly 18 people and will have them wait in a holding pen until the prior train empties out. Seats are then grabbed on a first-come, first-served basis. And the park does not let you wait for the next cycle. If there's room for you in the next train, you are required to board. Now, there are some tips I need to give when it comes to selecting seats in the Yankee Cannonball. 1. The front row is almost always the first seat to go. So if you want a front row ride and you see that seat open, take it without any hesitation, or someone else behind you certainly will. 2. The back row is not impossible to get. Often, people think they need to load the Yankee Cannonball front to back, but that's not the case. For that reason, even if I'm one of the last ones into the station, I can usually luck into the back row. And that's probably my favorite seat in the Yankee Cannonball by a slim margin over the front anyway. 3. You are allowed to bring loose articles with you into the station, but the loose article bin is located past the train. So while you walk over the loose article bin, everyone else behind you will start filling in the train. If you are alone and want to have an opportunity to pick a prime seat, do not bring any loose articles with you onto the platform. If you're with someone, have one person as the designated runner to drop them off at the loose article bin while the other person holds your row. 4. If you're a single rider, you may be asked to move. As I mentioned earlier, Canobie admits exactly 18 people into the station. More often than not, Canobie will prioritize keeping parties together. So if a group of 2 is unable to sit together, Canobie's staff will look for the single riders and ask them to pair up to free a row for the group of 2. As I mentioned earlier, Yankee Cannonball has glorious buzz bars. This means most riders will have several inches of room between their lap and the restraint. So this is excellent for airtime. But does the Yankee Cannonball have any? That's a bit of a complicated question. You see, your opinion of the Yankee Cannonball will be heavily impacted by when you rode it. I have been riding the Yankee Cannonball for the past 2 decades, ever since I hit that magical 48-inch mark. Because of the coaster's modest height and speed, the Yankee Cannonball's airtime is extremely sensitive to retracking. Until 2016, the Yankee Cannonball was fantastic. It didn't matter where I sat, I was getting amazing airtime in every single row. The airtime until the last few bunny hills was excellent. Even after riding hundreds of coasters across the United States, the Yankee Cannonball was still a borderline top 10 wooden roller coaster for me. But in the 2015-2016 off-season, GCI finished an almost complete retracking of the Yankee Cannonball, and the Yankee Cannonball has not been the same ever since. The coaster runs smoother than ever now. It's shocking to believe this ride is 90 years old. That's how smooth it is. But the airtime that was once present on most hills has been severely diminished. And it's not like the coaster runs more slowly or anything. If you compare a POV from say 2011 and 2019, the Yankee Cannonball clocks in at the exact same time. What GCI did was reprofile many of the coaster's hills. It's best noticed if you compare the 2 POVs side by side, but many of the ride's hills were smoothed out. When you consider that this coaster has a max speed of 35 miles per hour, any modification like that is going to really hurt this ride. The modification killed the abrupt airtime the ride used to deliver because of the hill's imperfections. Because of this, many of the hills had the strength of the airtime significantly reduced. This reprofiling is most evident on the second hill if you watch a pre-2016 POV with a post-2016 POV, but you can also notice the differences on some other hills. The other most notable change was the profiling of the far turnaround. Until the early 2000s, the far turnaround actually had a curved drop. Due to multiple complaints by guests, the turnaround was adjusted to straighten out before dropping back to the ground. But the turnaround did retain some of the laterals by adding a dip midway through the turn. But after the 2016 modification, the turnaround was completely flattened and made free of laterals. It was a buzzkill for sure. The end result of all this retracking was a Yankee Cannonball that was more family friendly. The ride is smoother than ever, and just as popular, if not even more popular. So in that regard, the retracking appears to be a win in the eyes of most park guests. But enthusiasts who grew up with the ride's copious airtime now need to temper their expectations. I'm not sure if it was the park's intention to tame the Yankee Cannonball or a mistake, but the park appears to acknowledge that the Yankee Cannonball is more family friendly now. Canobie rates their attractions as black diamonds, blue squares, and green circles. Green circles are the tamest rides, like the carousel. Blue squares are moderate rides, like the Tilt-A-Whirl, and black diamonds are the thrill rides. The park considers the Yankee Cannonball a moderate ride, which places it in the same tier as the park's kiddie coaster, and even more embarrassingly, below the park's pirate ship and scrambler. So in this review, I will cover how the coaster rode before 2016. At that point, I'd say the ride would have been a black diamond, and how it currently rides today as a blue square. After cresting the lift hill, you are treated to a 63-foot tall first drop. Previously, this drop gave some really strong airtime anywhere towards the back half of the train. But after the reprofiling, you only get airtime in the very back row. Not even the second to back row gets this airtime, only the very back. And it's really surprising it's that row specific because the airtime is still very good in the back row. That's followed by a speed hill. Previously, this hill gave some nice bouncy airtime, but today you get absolutely no airtime in this element. It is too drawn out. That's followed by the L-shaped turnaround. Previously, the entrance and exit to this element were sharper, so it gave some really strong airtime. Today, front row riders get some mild floater ascending this hill, and back row riders get a pinch of floater airtime in the descent. Up next is the sizable Camelback. Previously, this was another hill with great airtime, but today you only get a teeny tiny pop of airtime if the Yankee Cannonball is fully warmed up on a hot day. Then comes the far turnaround. I already touched on all the modifications that this turnaround received that reduced the laterals. As I mentioned, prior to 2016, the laterals in this turn were fantastic. Now, they're barely noticeable. And that reprofiling also removed the strong airtime entering and exiting this element. If you're up front, you still will get some floater airtime entering this turnaround if the ride's fully warmed up. But back row riders get no airtime in this turnaround. That's followed by this curved hill that delivers some excellent laterals, particularly towards the back of the train. It doesn't have any airtime. But at least the laterals are quite good and have not been diminished with all the retracking. That's followed by another speed hill that rides much like the first. It used to give a nice pop of airtime, but today, you get absolutely no airtime. It's another hill that's too drawn out. Thankfully, that is followed by the one hill that still rides as good today as it always has, and that's the final L-shaped turnaround. No matter where you sit, you get some powerful airtime throughout the train. For those who didn't ride the Yankee Cannonball prior to 2016, this is the type of airtime that used to exist on most hills before the reprofiling. If the Yankee Cannonball still had this type of airtime in every hill, it would still be one of my favorite wooden roller coasters and a much different ride experience. Now, the finale has never been great in the Yankee Cannonball. The return run consists of 3 bunny hills, but you crawl over these hills. Keep in mind, the Yankee Cannonball's top speed is just 35 miles per hour, and you've used a lot of that speed up by this point. On a good day up front, you might get maybe 2 pops of airtime in these hills, but they're very small pops of airtime. On a good day in the back, you'll be lucky to get even 1 pop of airtime. What is consistent, though, is the sharp burst of laterals you get entering the brake run. The final bunny hill has a quick, unbanked turn at the top that turns you slightly to the left and into the brake run. So what would I rate the Yankee Cannonball? Before 2016, I probably would have given this coaster a 9 out of 10. Getting that type of airtime with buzz bars was marvelous, and I never found the ride rough. It always ran smoothly. But today, I'd give the Yankee Cannonball a 6 out of 10. Yes, it's immaculately smooth, and it's a very nostalgic ride for me. This was my first wooden roller coaster. But the reality is that this wooden coaster doesn't feel very intense anymore, and it doesn't offer much airtime. On a good day, you might have several pops of airtime, but each pop is very weak. And it really pains me to give this classic wooden coaster a score that low, because the park really cares about their classic attraction. Hence all the track work and auxiliary upgrades it has received over the years. Beyond the new queue line being added for the 2020 season, Canobie is finally adding on-ride photos to the Yankee Cannonball. And the love for this attraction went beyond just 2020. If you look at the Yankee Cannonball through the years, it always seems to have a new paint scheme every few years. The park always wants the Yankee Cannonball to look fantastic because it borders the parking lot, and it's the first attraction you see when you're welcome to Canobie. So while I personally think the retracking neutered the ride, it's clear from the coaster's constant long lines that this is still the park's crown jewel and easily the most popular ride in the park. So in that regard, the retracking was a success because it will help preserve the ride's popularity for many years to come. So those are my thoughts on the Yankee Cannonball. What are your thoughts on this classic wooden roller coaster? Have you ridden it? I would love to hear your comments about the ride, particularly if you have ridden it both before and after the retracking. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate if you gave this video a like and considered subscribing because we'll have a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos coming here at Canobie Coaster. Thanks for listening.